Welcome everyone. It looks like it is 3:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started today. My name is Rachel Becker. I am the MTSS specialist on the SPDIG team, and I want to thank you all for coming out to our Spark Community of Practice. Today we are fortunate to have Lainey Potter, a certified academic language therapist. She will be presenting on explicit instruction. I'll take a quick minute to introduce Lainey and then I will give her the floor. So Lainey has a master's in special education with over a decade of experience supporting students with disabilities. She specializes in structured literacy and dyslexia intervention and currently serves as a project manager for special education professional development at the State Department. Lainey leads statewide work focused on improving outcomes for students with disabilities and brings deep expertise in literacy and math, accessibility, evidence-based interventions, and teacher training. So please join me in welcoming Lainey. And then I also have Benjamin, who is our data expert. He's going to be running things and I will be running the chat. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and then we'll give some time for Q&A at the end of the session. Lainey also said she would share the presentation with you all. We'll add it to the SPDIG link tree, and I'll put the link for that in the chat as well. It'll be accessible probably tomorrow. All right, Lainey, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So can everybody see my screen? We good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to be here today to talk to you about one of the most powerful research-backed approaches that we can use to help all students succeed, especially those who struggle. So our focus today is on how we can make learning visible, accessible, and achievable. For all of our students. I'm trying to get this to work so I can get my lights to turn. Sorry, excuse me, I'm using a different setup. So sorry. So by the end of our session, you'll be able to understand what explicit instruction is and why it works. So we hear a lot about explicit instruction. They talk about it in high leverage practices, in structured literacy models. If you have access to any of the What Works Clearinghouse instructional guides, they talk about explicit instruction. But we're going to talk about what it really means and what it looks like in your practice. We're going to explore strategies for how we can use explicit instruction in teaching reading and math, and then learn to plan and deliver explicit instruction effectively. I can't get this to move. Okay, so let's start with a shared definition. Explicit instruction is systematic, direct, and engaging instruction that teaches skills step by step. So as Anita Archer and Charles Hughes says, explicit instruction makes learning visible and accessible for all students. That visibility is where students clearly see what success looks like, and it is what makes this approach so effective. So why does this matter? Research shows that explicit instruction boosts achievement, especially for students who need the most support, and it increases engagement and confidence. If you look at this picture, I chose this picture because look at the students in the background. The girl sitting up front is not all of that, she is not engaged, and she doesn't look like she has a whole lot of confidence. So whether that's a writing assignment or if she's taking an assessment, it doesn't seem that she's going to be putting her best foot forward. So by using explicit instruction, we also build mastery through structure and repetition. And it has been validated across decades of studies in both reading and math. So the framework we use is often called the gradual release model. You may know it as the I do, we do, you do model. And in the I do phase, the teacher models the skills with clear explanations. In the we do, the students practice together with guidance and feedback. And then finally, in the you do, that's where students apply it independently to demonstrate mastery. So feedback is going to happen throughout. We want to be able to give them a lot of feedback to where we can break those bad habits and get them to use the skill appropriately. I also want to share with you that you will sometimes have to go back and do the I do and the we do over and over again before you set them out to do it independently. We want them to be able to meet that mastery before we put them out there to do it independently. So here are some here are the core components that we always want to include. We want to make sure that we have clear learning goals. I would always put my goals up on the board for my students to see, whether we were working with a new grapheme or if we were working on a fluency skill, I would have that goal clearly put on the board. We want to use modeling and those think alouds to make the thought process visible. We have so much that is made available to our students today through Google and ChatGPT that our kids don't have to really think about the process. If they need an answer, they can just Google it. So really use a lot of the think alouds. And we want to give them that guided practice with scaffolds. Immediate specific feedback. Again, we're trying to break those bad habits and correct those behaviors when we see them. And then regular review of opportunities for application. So in that model that I shared with you before, you will see the you do it and then the you do it alone. We want to make sure to give them lots and lots of practice. And that can come in a review at the beginning of your next day or have that repeated skill throughout the week. One other thing that I wanted to point out is Anita Archer has a video where she's talking about explicit instruction. And she talks about how we have these students that come to us in a period of time, whether that's a 30-minute intervention or 45-minute intervention. And when we spend all of our time talking, where I do it, I do it, I do it, I do it, and then our 30 minutes are up and it's just like, our time is up, I will see you again tomorrow. Just think about, what did your students get from that? We don't want to cut out that independent practice. And that is sometimes where we cut our students short and we don't give them enough time for that independent practice. So she suggests that if I say something, you say something, I write something, you write something, and so on. We need to keep those kids engaged. And again, if we run out of time, we need to work on trying to keep our lessons very structured and tight so we can keep it all within the time frame and give them enough practice with that skill. So before I get started in this, I do want to have you take some time and think about what lessons have you taught where you had these core features of explicit instruction to where you were able to teach your students a skill. And because this is a communities of practice, you guys are the ones that are in the field, and I love to hear all of the things that you are doing and teaching these skills to our students. So you can think about that before you answer. I just didn't want to put that on you at the very end. So it'll give you something to think about. I'm going to share a few things that I have done. So if you look at what explicit instruction might look like in reading, oftentimes we teach phonics and decoding. And this is only one part of what my lesson would look like, but I am taking a very short snippet of my lesson to show you how I would do it explicitly. So in this particular lesson, we're going to be teaching a new grapheme. The new grapheme would have already been introduced before we got to this particular skill. And several graphemes building up to this lesson would have already been introduced. Some of the things that I would have done probably for a warm-up is work on CVC words, where we're really focusing on those short vowel sounds. Because in this lesson, I'm going to be introducing the sound that is in final position. So we know that when we hear the sound in final position and it's followed by a short vowel sound, then we're going to be using digraph CK. So after I would introduce that lesson, then we would use our phoneme grapheme mapping to unblend those sounds in words and then be able to spell those words. So I'm going to give you an example, and you are now my class. So class, I'm going to give you a word. I want you to echo this word. I'm going to unblend it by pushing up my colored squares, and then we're going to put a letter for each sound that we hear. So I'm going to demonstrate one for you. My word is back, and I would have them say the word back. Then I would unblend. Oh, that's not going to work. And then I'm going to be putting a letter with each of those sounds. So B is B, A, and I would go ahead and remind them that this is my short vowel sound. So if I have a short vowel sound before my sound, I'm going to be using that digraph CK. So then we would do the next one together. So I would give the students the word. The word is sock. I wish I had a student to reply back to me here. And they would echo the word sock. We would do this together where I would make sure that they would push up their colored squares together. Ah. And then we would give each sound a letter. S verse ah, O, and digraph CK. And then I would follow it up with words for them to do themselves. And I would give them the word, but then I would step back and watch them unblend with their colored squares and spell. In this case, the word is duck. The students would unblend and then put the letters. And then you could do the independent practice as much as you needed to. But it's really important to monitor them and to correct those errors immediately. Sometimes you would need to echo those sounds for them to make sure that they are writing their letters correctly. And then again, we're just wanting to make sure that we give them that feedback so there are no errors. So this next example is going to be using semantics, which is vocabulary and text meaning. So on this day, my goal was learning a new morpheme. So we know a morpheme is the smallest unit of language that carries meaning. And this lesson actually came in my class, but I was doing kind of a review and teaching morphemes to my students to help them in their social studies or science classes. I believe this one was actually a science class in early elementary. And in my class, I also use a graphic organizer that's displayed on one of my boards where I put all of the previous morphemes on there so they can review. And at the end, they can even build words together using those morphemes. But my vocabulary or my vocabulary lesson is very, very structured. So then they know the routine. And so that way they can just think about what it is that I'm asking for and in the word and develop word meanings in sentences, but it's very structured. So a lot of their thought processes can go into actually learning the skill itself. So today my word is going to be import. And I would have my class repeat. The word is import. So in the word import, how many syllables do we have? Import. And they would reply with 2. And then I would say, how many morphemes do I have? In the word import, one of them has been previously taught. And so they would recognize M, and then we have port. And so port is going to be my root word. Now, if I go to define import, we have the previous knowledge of knowing that M means N. And today, port is going to mean carry. So when we put that together in a definition, it means to carry in. And we want to make sure that our definitions are student friendly. It does not need to come from a glossary of a book. We just need to make sure that it's something that they understand in their terms. And then I would have them come up with this sentence. So in my sentence today for import, I wrote the sentence, the United States imports fresh fruit from countries with warmer climates. So here we are in a season change where our gardens are empty, our flower beds are empty, the leaves are falling off of the trees. So we have to import our fresh fruits and vegetables from other countries when we have this season change where nothing grows. That's how we still have fruits and vegetables in our stores. So then I would follow up with yes or no questions. So when I ask them yes or no questions, it's for them to really think about the word and get a deeper understanding. So for my yes or no questions, I would have them give me a thumbs up for yes, a thumbs down for no, and I would ask, do other countries besides the United States import products? And of course, they would say yes. And do farmers import the crops that they grow locally? And they would say no. Now, this was an elementary lesson, so we didn't get into the supply and demand. And then I would ask, can they export? And I would say, we're going to come back to this word, so you can save that answer for a little bit later. And then I would have them do a think, pair, share, where they turn to a partner and tell your partner something that might be imported. And of course, we have Sally here who tells me that her mom's coffee beans are imported from another country. So my next word that we would do together is export, because I'm going back to that lesson. And I would ask the students to tell me how many syllables, how many morphemes, and then to come up with the definition. And we would do all of this together. We know that export means to carry out. And then I would have somebody from the class give me a sentence, or the group, we would develop a sentence together. And with this sentence, we have farmers in Oklahoma export wheat to other countries around the world. And then for the next two, I would have them work on those together in groups or individually. And again, I have a graphic organizer on my board that's going to help them with that suffix able and also that prefix trans, where they can come up with those definitions on their own, giving them that scaffold of support. Now we can also use explicit instruction in math. This is going to be a lesson where I was teaching math by regrouping. But this math skill is, again, another very structured routine that I use with building numbers in teaching place value. Then I also use it in addition and subtraction. But this one was probably the most eye-opening to me. And I'll tell you about my student and our experience with this. So as a warm-up, I could have the students go ahead and start building their numbers. So how we often use word chains where we're changing cat to hat by changing that initial letter, we can do the same thing with math and building numbers. So I can have them build a number on their mat using popsicle sticks or their 10 frame blocks and change the number by just changing one place value at a time in changing those numbers. So that could have been a warm up to this lesson, but at the end of that warm up, I would have them end with the number 125. So 125 is made up of 100, 2 tens, and 5 ones. So this is how they would have their mat set up. And then if I were to do this as that exercise where we're changing our numbers, that if I have 125, I could tell them, give me 115. And of course, they would be taken 110 block away. And then you can just continue to do that chain. But in this case, I'm going to be using this to work on my class goal of doing subtraction by regrouping. And so I'm going to start with 125. And I must sell 125 tickets for the school play. So if I sold 7 tickets at school today, how many tickets do I have left? So I would ask my students, can we take 7 away? Well, of course we can take 7 away because we have 125 tickets. But showing them how we are going to take 7 ones away, we have to do a little regrouping. So to do that, we are going to have to take a set of 10 from our tens place, and we're going to have to move it over to our ones. Now, I would always have them group them in sets of 5, or if I'm using popsicle sticks, I would have them do the popsicle sticks like in little tallies because it makes it easier to do bigger operations as you move on. So I also try to help the kids stay organized, and they're going to need to do that same thing even when they line up their equations on paper. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. So once I move that over to my ones place, I now can take 7 away. And when I take that 7 away, now what do I have? And when I look at my map, I have 100, 110, and 8 ones. So my new number is 118. And so then I would continue to go on and we would work on this together. And so having them work with 118, this time I sold 9 tickets in my neighborhood. So if I'm starting with 118 and I need to take 9 away, then my students would take away their tens, add it to their ones, take away their 9. Oh my goodness, and I have a square that's out of range there, leaving me with 109 tickets left. Now, in this process, this is called the CRA model, which means concrete, representational, and abstract. So what I just displayed was concrete. As they get to recognize that, they can do more representational, which is them drawing what that math would look like. And then abstract is obviously putting that into numbers. So I can show you how I have moved that lesson from more concrete to abstract by going back and doing that last problem together. So if I changed my lesson where I had 118 tickets left to sell, this is where they could write 118 on paper. After they build the number, then they write the number. And when I'm going to take it away, we know that means that we're going to subtract, and I'm going to subtract 9. Now, this is where my student came to me and he was having trouble with subtraction with regrouping. And I had him do I guess it was his gen ed teacher had him do some equations and he brought his paper to me and he had all of these random numbers written down. And so I just wanted him to explain to me, how did he come up with those numbers? And he said that his teacher just marks them out and then just writes a number on top. He doesn't know where she's getting that. He's just writing a number up there. And I'm like, well, let me show you where that number comes from. So this is where it was just like mind blowing to him that there was actually a reason why we cross out that number and change it. And so sometimes having that concrete and then the abstract side by side is where the light bulb comes on. So we move our 10 over, add it to our ones, and then I would have the student look at that and go, okay, now how can I change my equation to match my mat? Because I no longer have anything in my tens place, so I'm going to mark that out and I'm going to put a 0, and I've got 18 that is actually in my ones place, and now I can subtract. And now I have 109. So to make this work in real classrooms, we need to use clear, concise language and avoid that overload. Make sure that you don't go stay on topic and don't just talk, and make sure that they have enough to keep them engaged as you're teaching your lessons as well. Plan your scaffolds intentionally. So if you're going to be working with morphemes, make sure that you have the supports that your students need, even with math or reading. You want to monitor those responses consistently. So what are the children showing you? Because a lot of times of what they are showing you is going to teach you or guide your instruction in what you could use as a warm up or review later on down the road. So if they tend to have a hard time with a certain skill, then make sure that you start off with that. The next day is review. And give them that extra practice. And then check for understanding frequently. We want to make sure that they are getting the skill down to mastery and provide both positive and corrective feedback. Don't just tell them, sorry, try again. Make sure that you give them some positive feedback, because our students oftentimes are coming to us extremely frustrated. So we want to make sure that we tell them that we appreciate their hard work, and then have them explain what their thought process is on how they came up with that. And sometimes we just need to take it a little bit slower for them to be able to hear us correctly, or to review that skill one more time with them, maybe more one-on-one. This consistency creates a learning environment where every student feels guided and capable. So here's what a simple 20 or 30-minute explicit instruction lesson might look like. I took the time to show you like snippets and then talked about what I would have done previously to this new skill, but I would review previous learning. And this previous learning could be the day before or the week before, but we want to make sure that we give them a lot of repetition. And then we're going to state today's objective. So we want to make sure that it's clear. A lot of our students too come into our classrooms with anxiety of not knowing what's going to happen. But if we can give them those objectives on the board, then it kind of helps with the transition. So it could be them learning a new grapheme, a root word, or how to subtract with regrouping, like some of the skills that I showed you today. We're going to model that new skill. We're going to do that in front of them. We're going to do that with them. And then, of course, we're going to have students practice independently. That is going to be the important part that I hope we do not continue to cut off because of time constraints. And then wrap up with a brief review or reflection. A lot of times I would have those kids give me like a ticket out the door. Because we always have those groups where there's somebody who answers all of the questions or is a little bit more vocal than the rest. And so I would like to give them like a ticket out the door where it's either them writing a sentence or they're giving me a new word, or maybe they solved a problem independently. And then it gives me that one-on-one time with each one of them as they're walking out the door. And it also is guiding me to where I see that they could use a little bit more practice and guide me in my instruction. So this structure builds predictability and keeps lessons tight and focused. So if we can keep those lessons very structured, then it kind of helps us with our time management as well. Oops, sorry about that. So here are some additional resources. Like I said at the very beginning, our high leverage practices talks about it, explicit instruction. It's actually number 16. And there is a video on uh, explicit instruction on this website. It's a really good video. It kind of shows them working with students at all skill levels using explicit instruction. And then, of course, the book from Anita Archer and Charles Hughes called Explicit Instruction, but you can also go to their website. And then understood.org has a article on what is explicit instruction. So I want to thank all of you for your time this afternoon. I was really happy to be able to chat with you today. I can't wait to hear what some of your lessons are like. And if you are having trouble with some of your lessons, I think we can open it up for that as well. And if you have any questions throughout the year, here's my contact. Feel free to reach out. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Lainey. We really appreciate you presenting. That was great information. Are there any questions for Lainey before we end the session? Anything that you would like to ask today, you can go ahead and type it in the chat. And I do appreciate your feedback on the timing. Just to let you know that the recording will be available through the Spark modules, as well as you can access the presentation through the SPIDIG link tree, and I'll put that in the chat as well. So it looks like there are no questions at this time. But like Lainey said, if you have any questions for her, she left her contact information. We'll go ahead and end the session then. Have a great afternoon, and thank you all for joining.